Fame changes people. That's the rule. The bigger the spotlight, the thicker the wall between a celebrity and the rest of the world. But every now and then, a group comes along that quietly breaks that pattern, not with grand gestures or PR-coached photo ops, but in the smallest, most unscripted moments. The kind that happen at airport security lines at 5 a.m. or backstage checkpoints where exhausted staff are just doing their jobs. Stray Kids, 8 numbers, millions of fans worldwide, schedules packed to the edge of human endurance. And yet, when they walk up to a metal detector or hand over their bags for inspection, something unusual happens. They don't just comply, they connect. Security personnel, people who are trained to stay neutral, to watch, to assess, have been caught off guard by how these idols treat them. Not as obstacles, not as invisible, as people. So who among the 8 does it best? Who turns a tense, procedural moment into something genuinely warm? Let's start at number 8. Number 8, Changbin. In a group full of distinct personalities, Changbin occupies a unique space. On stage, he is one of the most intense performers in 4th-generation Kpop, a rapper whose delivery hits like a freight train, whose presence commands arenas. His stage name alone carries weight. But step away from the lights, away from the choreography and the roaring crowds, and you find someone far quieter than his performance persona would ever suggest. And nowhere is that contrast more visible than during security checks. To understand why this matters, you first need to understand what security screenings actually look like for an idol group operating at Stray Kids level. These aren't casual walkthroughs. At international airports, Incheon, Narita, LAX, and Heathrow, the process involves multiple checkpoints. Bags go through X-ray machines, electronics come out, jackets come off. Sometimes there are secondary screenings, pat-downs, additional questioning. For a group traveling as frequently as Stray Kids does, crisscrossing continents for world tours, fan meetings, award shows, and variety appearances, this process repeats dozens of times a year. It becomes routine, but routine doesn't mean easy. Jet lag, tight schedules, and the constant presence of cameras and fans at departure gates add pressure that most travelers never experience. Now, picture Changbin in that environment. Fan-taken footage from airports across the world consistently shows the same thing. He approaches the process without resistance, without visible frustration, and without the kind of dismissive body language that fatigue often produces. He follows directions, he places his items where they need to go. When an officer gestures or gives an instruction, sometimes in a language Changbin doesn't fluently speak, he responds with a calm nod, an acknowledgement that says, "I understand and I'm cooperating." That nod is worth pausing on. In Korean culture, nonverbal communication carries significant meaning. A nod toward someone in a position of authority, especially one delivered with a slight bow of the head rather than a casual chin dip, signals respect. It says, "I see you, I recognize your role, I'm not above this process." For someone with Changbin's fame and cultural influence, that small motion carries more weight than a spoken sentence might. Security staff, particularly in South Korea and Japan, operate within hierarchical professional structures where acknowledgement from the person being screened can meaningfully affect the tone of the interaction. Changbin's consistent, polite compliance does exactly that. It sets a cooperative tone before a single word is exchanged. There's also the matter of patience. Airport security procedures are, by design, repetitive. The same steps, the same questions, the same waiting. For someone who has been through this process hundreds of times across countries, the temptation to rush, to show impatience, to treat the whole thing as beneath notice, that temptation is real. Veteran travelers, even non-famous ones, often develop a kind of bored tolerance at best, barely concealed irritation at worst. Changbin doesn't display either. Multiple fan accounts and airport departure videos show him standing calmly in line, waiting his turn, not attempting to expedite the process or signal that his time is more valuable than anyone else's. This composure extends to concert venue security as well. Before performances, especially at large-scale events and festivals, artists and their teams go through backstage security that can be just as thorough as airport screening: equipment checks, credential verification, bag inspections. All of it happens in a compressed time frame, usually while the artist is mentally preparing to perform in front of tens of thousands of fans. The stress level in those moments is high, and yet staff who have worked events where Stray Kids performed have noted through social media posts and fan-relayed interactions that the members, Changbin among them, moved through these checkpoints without creating friction. What makes Changbin's behavior notable enough to earn a spot on this list isn't any single dramatic gesture. There's no viral clip of him doing something spectacular at a security gate. That's precisely the point. His consistency is the story. He doesn't cooperate because cameras are watching. He doesn't perform politeness for content. He simply moves through the process the way everyone should, but few, famous or otherwise, reliably do. It's also worth considering the physical dynamic at play. Changbin is visibly muscular, with a build that stands out even among idols known for rigorous fitness routines. In security contexts, where security officers are trained to assess body language and physical presence quickly, someone with his build who also projects calm, cooperative energy sends a very specific signal. It communicates that physical confidence and social humility are not contradictions. Security personnel respond to that. It makes their job easier, and it removes a layer of tension that sometimes exists when public figures move through controlled spaces. There's a broader principle at work here, and Changbin embodies it quietly. The way a person treats a process they have every reason to find tedious reveals something real about their character. Anyone can be polite at a fan signing where warmth is part of the job description. Anyone can be gracious during an interview where charm serves a professional purpose. But security checks offer nothing in return. There's no audience reward for being cooperative at a metal detector. There's no career benefit to nodding politely at a TSA agent. The only reason to do it is because you believe the person in front of you deserves that basic respect. Changbin believes it, quietly, repeatedly, without fanfare. He may rank 8th on this list, but his steady, no-fuss cooperation sets a foundation that the rest of the members build on. And as we move up the countdown, you'll see that foundation expressed in increasingly personal and surprising ways, starting with a member whose approach to security checks is less about calm compliance and more about meticulous preparation.
Number 7. Seungmin. There's a particular kind of person who, when standing in a security line, already has their laptop out of the bag, their belt in the bin, and their boarding pass ready before the officer even looks in their direction. That person doesn't do it to show off. They do it because they've thought 3 steps ahead, and they understand that preparation is its own form of courtesy. In Stray Kids, that person is Kim Seungmin. Seungmin has built a reputation within the fandom and among the members themselves as someone who operates with precision. He's the member who reads instructions before anyone else, the one who arrives early, the one whose personal space tends to be organized when cameras catch glimpses of dorm life or hotel rooms on reality content. This isn't a manufactured trait or an idol persona crafted for variety shows. It's a consistent behavior pattern visible across years of content, from their pre-debut survival show to their most recent world tour. And that precision translates directly to how he handles security checkpoints. To appreciate what Seungmin does, consider the logistics of what a K-pop group carries through airport security. It's not just personal luggage. Members often travel with multiple devices: phones, tablets, portable gaming consoles, laptops. They carry in-ear monitors, accessories, skincare products in quantities that frequently trigger the liquids rule at international checkpoints. Some carry personal cameras for content creation. The sheer volume of items that need to come out of bags, go into bins, and pass through scanners is significantly higher than what a typical traveler deals with. Multiply that by 8 members plus staff, all moving through the same checkpoint in a compressed window, often while fans and media document every second from behind barriers, and you have a scenario where disorganization doesn't just slow things down, it creates cascading delays. Seungmin doesn't let that happen on his end. Fan-captured airport footage consistently shows him arriving at the screening area with his belongings already sorted. Items that need to be removed are accessible. Things are placed into bins methodically, not tossed in haphazardly. He doesn't fumble through pockets looking for a forgotten item while the line stacks up behind him. He anticipates what the officers will need from him and provides it before the request is made. This might sound like a small thing. It isn't. Security personnel at high-traffic international airports process hundreds, sometimes thousands of passengers per shift. The job is physically demanding, mentally exhausting, and largely thankless. Officers are trained to maintain strict protocols regardless of who is passing through, but the human element never fully disappears. A passenger who is prepared, who has their belongings organized, who doesn't require repeated instructions, that passenger makes the officer's job measurably easier. It reduces processing time. It eliminates the need for additional communication, which is especially significant when language barriers exist. And it signals something that security professionals genuinely notice. This person respects the process enough to prepare for it. Seungmin also stands out in how he communicates during screenings. When officers ask questions about the contents of a bag, about a flagged item on the X-ray, about travel documentation, he answers clearly and directly. There's no mumbling, no confusion, no vague gestures. He provides the information that's needed in the manner it's needed, and moves on. In environments where noise levels are high, where stress runs through everyone present, and where miscommunication can escalate a routine check into a prolonged secondary screening, clarity is not just polite, it's practical. This communication style reflects something deeper about Seungmin's character that stays have long observed. He is, by nature, someone who values competence, both in himself and in others. He respects expertise. When a security officer is executing a protocol, Seungmin treats that protocol as legitimate and responds accordingly. He doesn't approach the interaction as an inconvenience to endure. He approaches it as a structured process that works best when both sides participate properly. There's an interesting cultural layer here as well. In South Korea, the concept of nunchi, the ability to read a social situation and respond appropriately, is deeply embedded in interpersonal interactions. Having good nunchi means understanding what's needed without being told, adapting your behavior to match the context, and making the people around you feel comfortable. Seungmin's approach to security checks is, in many ways, nunchi in action. He reads the environment, identifies what will make the process smoothest for everyone involved, and executes accordingly. The staff don't need to manage him, he manages himself. At concert venues, this same quality manifests in slightly different ways. Backstage security at large-scale events often involves credential checks at multiple access points, entering the venue, accessing the stage area, moving between green rooms and production zones. Each checkpoint requires identification, sometimes bag checks, sometimes equipment verification. For artists moving through these zones repeatedly during sound checks, rehearsals, and the performance itself, the process can feel relentless. Seungmin navigates these checkpoints with the same organized efficiency he brings to airports. Credentials ready, belongings accessible, questions answered before they're fully asked. The cumulative effect is that security teams don't remember Seungmin as the idol they screened. They remember him, if they remember him at all, as the person who made their job a little bit easier during a long, demanding shift. And in many ways, that's the highest form of respect you can offer someone in a service role. Not grand gestures or performative kindness, but the simple act of not adding to their burden. Seungmin's preparedness is quiet. It doesn't generate viral moments or emotional fan edits. It generates something less visible, but arguably more valuable. Smooth, friction-free interactions that leave everyone involved with a little more energy and a little less stress than they had before. It's a different kind of friendliness, expressed not through smiles or words, but through the effort of being ready. And while Seungmin handles security with the calm efficiency of someone who has studied the playbook, the next member on our list takes an entirely different approach, one that relies less on preparation and more on a warmth so natural it disarms everyone in the room before the screening even starts.
Number 6. IN. Jongin. Every group has a youngest member. In K-pop, that role carries a specific cultural title, maknae. And with it comes a set of expectations that shape how fans, staff, and even the other members perceive that person. The maknae is often indulged, protected, playfully teased, but Yang Jong-in, Stray Kids' youngest, has spent years quietly redefining what that role looks like. He's not the helpless baby of the group that early Variety edits sometimes painted him as. He's grown into someone who carries himself with a self-awareness and social grace that catches people off guard, especially people who meet him in passing in unglamorous settings, under fluorescent lights, at security checkpoints. And it starts with a smile. That might sound unremarkable. People smile all the time, but context determines everything, and the context of a security screening is designed to suppress exactly the kind of warmth that Jong-in brings to it. Think about what a security checkpoint actually feels like from the staff side. Officers working airport or venue security operate under specific behavioral guidelines. They are trained to remain neutral, observant, and procedurally focused. They are not there to socialize. Their job requires them to assess potential risks, enforce protocols, and process individuals efficiently. Emotional engagement with the people passing through is, in most training frameworks, actively discouraged, not because officers are cold people, but because the work demands consistent neutrality across every interaction, whether the person in front of them is a nervous first-time traveler or a globally famous idol. So when someone walks up to a security checkpoint and greets the officer with a genuine, full smile, not a polite courtesy flicker, not a camera-ready pose, but an actual warm acknowledgement, it creates a small disruption in the expected pattern, and that disruption, when it's positive, is felt. Jong-in does this consistently. Fan-taken footage at airports across South Korea, Japan, the United States, and Europe shows a repeating pattern. As he approaches security personnel, he makes eye contact and smiles. Not after the process, not as a thank you on the way out, at the beginning. Before anything has happened, before his bag is scanned, before his ID is checked, before any instruction is given, he opens the interaction with warmth. This matters more than it might seem, and the reason is rooted in social psychology. Research into what's known as emotional contagion, the well-documented phenomenon where one person's expressed emotion influences the emotional state of those around them, shows that positive facial expressions, particularly genuine smiles, can shift the mood of an interaction within seconds. A 2014 study published in the journal Motivation and Emotion demonstrated that even brief exposure to a genuine smile activates reward-related neural pathways in the observer, producing a measurable shift in affect. In plain terms, when Jong-in smiles at a security officer, there is a real physiological mechanism through which that officer's experience of the interaction improves. But it's not just the smile, it's the posture that accompanies it. Jong-in carries himself with a humility that reads as natural rather than performed. In Korean social interaction, the way you hold your body communicates as much as what you say. A slight bow of the head when greeting someone, hands positioned respectfully rather than stuffed in pockets, shoulders relaxed but not slouched. These are physical signals that convey gyeomsan, a loosely translated concept of humility or modesty, but carrying more nuance than the English word captures. Gyeomsan isn't about making yourself small, it's about acknowledging the other person's presence and worth, without demanding that your own status be recognized first. For a 22-year-old with millions of fans worldwide, platinum records, sold-out stadiums, and a level of public recognition that makes anonymous movement nearly impossible, choosing to carry that kind of humility into a security line is a decision. It's not automatic. Fame has a gravitational pull that bends behavior, often without the famous person even noticing. The default trajectory is toward detachment, toward treating routine interactions as beneath attention. Jung-in actively resists that trajectory, and the evidence is in the reactions he generates. Security staff have been observed in fan videos, in background moments of airport footage, smiling back at him. That detail is easy to overlook, but it shouldn't be. These are professionals whose training emphasizes neutrality. When they break that neutrality to return a smile, it's because something genuine has reached them. Jung-in's greeting doesn't feel like an act. It feels like a person who is happy to see another person, regardless of the circumstances. There's another dimension to this worth exploring. As the maknae, Jung-in spent his training years and early career surrounded by older members and senior industry figures. The hierarchical nature of Korean culture, amplified within the entertainment industry's sunbae, hubae system, means that Jung-in was socialized from a young age to show respect to those around him, particularly to those in authority or service roles. What's notable is that he didn't shed this behavior as his own fame and confidence grew. Many young idols, as they transition from rookies to established artists, gradually relax the formalities that marked their early careers. Jung-in hasn't. If anything, fan observations suggest his warmth towards staff and security personnel has become more natural over time, not less, a sign that the behavior has moved from learned etiquette into genuine character. At concert venues, where backstage security teams encountered dozens of artists and their entourages over the course of a single event, Jung-in's approach stands out precisely because it contrasts with the norm. Most artists move through backstage checkpoints in a state of focused preparation, mentally rehearsing set lists, conserving energy, managing pre-performance nerves. Greeting security staff with a bright smile during those moments requires a conscious outward shift of attention, a willingness to be present with someone whose role in the event is invisible to the audience. Jung-in makes that shift, and the people on the receiving end of it notice. His friendliness isn't loud, it isn't performative, it's the kind that exists in the first 2 seconds of an interaction, a smile, a posture, a presence that says, "You matter to me right now," and then moves on, leaving the other person feeling just a little lighter than they did before. And if Jung-in's warmth is quiet and instinctive, the next member on this list operates with a different frequency entirely. Someone whose respect for security staff is so understated, so elegantly delivered, that it often goes unnoticed until you pay very close attention.
Number 5. Lee No. Lee Miho, known to the world as Lee No, is one of the most misread idols in modern K-pop. Watch a few clips out of context, and you might conclude he's aloof, maybe even indifferent. His face at rest carries a composed neutrality that fan communities have affectionately labeled resting cat face. He doesn't overexpress. He doesn't fill silences with nervous chatter. On variety shows, his humor is dry, deadpan, sometimes so subtle that it sails over the heads of hosts expecting louder reactions. He is, in many ways, the quietest presence in a group full of high-energy personalities. And it is exactly this quality that makes his behavior during security checks so striking, because when Lee No shows respect, he does it without any of the social ornamentation that typically accompanies polite behavior. What you get from him is pure, undecorated sincerity. Start with the basics. During security screenings, at airports, at venue entry points, at the countless checkpoints that structure the logistical reality of international touring, Lee No follows instructions. That statement sounds almost absurdly simple, but simplicity is the point. He doesn't follow instructions with visible reluctance. He doesn't follow them with exaggerated enthusiasm designed to signal what a good person he is. He listens, he complies, he moves through the process with a calm economy of motion that communicates something very specific. I take this seriously, and I take you seriously. Officers working security are trained observers. Their entire professional skill set revolves around reading people, assessing body language, identifying behavioral anomalies, gauging cooperation levels in real time. They encounter thousands of individuals, and they develop an internal taxonomy almost unconsciously. There are the combative ones who resent the process. There are the performers who make a show of cooperation. There are the anxious ones whose nervousness creates complications. And then, rarely, there are the ones who simply comply. No friction. No performance. Just clean, respectful participation. Lee No falls into that last category, and security professionals notice it even when they don't consciously register why. But compliance alone isn't what earns him the 5th spot on this list. What elevates Lee No is what happens after the screening is complete. Fan-documented airport footage reveals a consistent behavior. Once Lee No has cleared a checkpoint, his bags scanned, person screened, documents verified, he pauses. Not long. A beat, maybe 2. And he thanks the officer. In Korean airports, this takes the form of a verbal 감사합니다, the formal register of thank you, often accompanied by a slight bow. At international airports, where language barriers may exist, the same gratitude is expressed through a nod, a brief moment of eye contact, or a quiet thank you in English. The delivery is always the same, understated, direct, devoid of any attempt to draw attention to the gesture itself. This post-screening acknowledgement carries a particular weight that's worth unpacking. Most people, when they clear a security checkpoint, experience a small rush of relief. The process is over. The mild stress of being scrutinized dissolves. The instinct is to move forward, toward the gate, toward the lounge, toward whatever comes next. The checkpoint officer, at that moment, ceases to exist in the traveler's attention. They become part of the infrastructure, like the conveyor belt or the scanner itself. Turning back, even briefly, to acknowledge the person who just processed you is a conscious act of recognition. It says, I know you're a person, not a machine. And I appreciate what you just did. Lee No does this habitually. Not occasionally. Not when cameras are obviously pointed at him. Habitually. There is a Korean concept that maps closely onto this behavior, yiui, a term often translated as manners or courtesy, but carrying deeper implications of propriety and moral consideration. Yiui isn't about performing politeness for social reward. It's about maintaining a standard of conduct because the conduct itself has value. Someone with strong yiui doesn't thank a security officer to look good. They do it because failing to would feel like a personal lapse. Lee No's public persona sometimes obscures how deeply this value runs in him. Because he doesn't broadcast his courtesy, because he doesn't smile widely or make exaggerated gestures of appreciation, casual observers can miss it entirely. But people who interact with him directly don't miss it. The thank you lands. The bow registers. The momentary pause that interrupts the post-screening rush communicates something that no amount of performative warmth could replicate. This person means it. There's another layer to Lee No's conduct during security situations that deserves attention, his patience. Lee No is a person of routine and precision. His background as a former backup dancer for BTS before joining JYP Entertainment's trainee program instilled in him a professional discipline that permeates how he operates. Dance training at that level requires submitting to repetitive processes, the same movement drilled 100 times, The same correction accepted without argument, the same sequence perfected through patience rather than protest. That discipline translates directly to how he handles the repetitive nature of security checks. The process doesn't bore him into disengagement. It doesn't irritate him into visible impatience. He treats each screening as what it is, a necessary procedure conducted by someone doing their job, and he gives it the respect that framing demands. At concert venues, where the energy backstage is charged with pre-show adrenaline and post-show exhaustion, Lee No's composed approach to security creates a specific kind of calm. Staff working those environments operate under intense time pressure, and an artist who moves through their checkpoint without drama, without delay, and with a quiet word of thanks at the end is, from a purely operational standpoint, a gift. Lee No's elegance isn't the kind that announces itself. It's the kind that you feel only after the interaction is over, when you realize that someone just treated you with complete respect and asked for absolutely nothing in return. And while Lee No communicates his friendliness through restraint and precision, the next member on this list takes a more visible approach, one where every bow, every glance, and every gesture is delivered with a warmth so deliberate that it borders on an art form. Number 4. Hyunjin. Hwang Hyunjin is someone the camera loves. That's not an opinion, it's a structural fact of his career. As Stray Kids' most followed individual member on Instagram, with tens of millions of followers, and one of the most recognizable faces in fourth-generation K-pop, Hyunjin exists in a constant state of visual scrutiny. Every airport arrival is documented by fan sites with telephoto lenses. Every public movement generates footage that circulates within hours. He is, by any metric, someone who lives under the gaze. What makes Hyunjin remarkable in the context of security checks is that he doesn't just tolerate that gaze, he uses the awareness it creates to be intentional about how he treats the people around him. And the people at security checkpoints, who are functionally invisible to most travelers, receive from Hyunjin a level of physical courtesy that is deliberate, consistent, and rooted in a body language vocabulary he has clearly internalized. Start with the bow. In Korean culture, bowing is not a single gesture. It's a spectrum. The angle, the duration, the speed, the placement of the hands, each variation communicates something different. A casual 15-degree nod between peers says something very different from a 45-degree bow held for a full second. The deeper the bow, the greater the respect conveyed. The longer it's held, the more sincere it reads. This isn't ceremonial formality preserved only in traditional settings. It's a living, active communication system used daily across South Korea, from convenience store transactions to corporate meetings. Hyunjin bows to security staff. Not the perfunctory head dip that satisfies minimum social expectations. Fan-captured footage at airports, Incheon, Gimpo, and international terminals across Asia and the West consistently shows him delivering bows that communicate genuine acknowledgement. His upper body inclines at an angle that, in Korean social grammar, signals respect towards someone whose role you value. He doesn't rush the motion. He doesn't do it while simultaneously walking past, which would convert the bow from a greeting into a dismissal. He pauses, bows, and then proceeds. For airport security officers, many of whom process celebrities, business executives, and government officials on a regular basis, this kind of greeting from a young idol with Hyunjin's level of fame registers. It registers because it's unusual. The default behavior from high-profile individuals at security checkpoints tends toward one of two modes: complete disengagement, where the celebrity treats the interaction as beneath notice, or transactional efficiency, where compliance is offered without any personal warmth. Hyunjin operates in neither mode. He engages. Then there's the eye contact. Eye contact during security screenings is a nuanced behavior. Officers make eye contact as part of their assessment protocol. It's a tool for reading intent, gauging cooperation, detecting anxiety. But eye contact from the person being screened, directed back at the officer, serves a different function entirely. It humanizes the interaction. It breaks the asymmetry of a process where one person holds authority and the other submits to it. When Hyunjin looks at a security officer, not through them, not past them, but at them, he collapses that power distance for a moment. He creates a peer-to-peer exchange within a structure that is inherently hierarchical. Fan accounts have specifically noted the quality of Hyunjin's eye contact in these situations. It isn't intense or confrontational. It's warm. He looks at officers the way you look at someone you're thanking for holding a door, with recognition, with brief connection, with the implicit message that you see them as an individual, not a function. And then there are the hands. Hyunjin has been observed, repeatedly, across multiple airports and venues, making a small gesture with his hands during or after security interactions. In Korean body language, the way hands are used during a greeting or expression of thanks carries communicative weight. Placing one hand over the other in front of the body, or lightly pressing both palms together in a brief motion of acknowledgement, signals appreciation that goes beyond verbal thanks. It's a physical punctuation mark that says, "This interaction mattered to me enough to use my body to express it, not just my words." This gestural vocabulary isn't something Hyunjin invented. It's drawn from Korean social customs that he was raised within. But the choice to deploy it, consistently, in high-stress, low-visibility moments like security checkpoints, reveals something about his character that stage performances and carefully curated social media posts cannot. It reveals that his courtesy is structural, built into how he physically moves through the world, not a surface behavior applied selectively when the situation demands it. There's a particular dimension to Hyunjin's approach that connects to his identity as a visual artist. Outside of music, Hyunjin is known for his painting and drawing, disciplines that train a person to be acutely aware of form, of how bodies occupy space, of how physical positioning communicates emotion. Artists who work in visual media develop a heightened sensitivity to gesture, to the way a turned wrist or an angled shoulder can convey meaning that language sometimes can't. It is reasonable to observe that this sensitivity informs how Hyunjin moves through social interactions, including security checks. His body language doesn't feel accidental. It feels considered, not in a calculated way, but in the way that someone who thinks in visual terms naturally expresses intention through physical form. At concert venues, where backstage security encounters are brief and transactional by necessity, Hyunjin's gestural warmth leaves an outsized impression. Security staff at these events interact with dozens of performers and crew members over the course of a single show. Most of those interactions are forgotten within minutes. But when someone bows with sincerity, makes warm eye contact, and offers a small physical gesture of thanks, all within the span of a few seconds, that interaction becomes memorable. Not because it was dramatic, but because it was complete. Every channel of communication, visual, physical, spatial, carried the same message, "Thank you, and I respect what you do." Hyunjin's friendliness is embodied. It lives in his posture, his gaze, his hands. It is courtesy expressed as movement. And if Hyunjin communicates warmth through the language of the body, the next member on this list communicates it through something far less controlled and far more contagious. An energy so irrepressibly positive that it rewrites the atmosphere of any room he walks into, security checkpoint or otherwise. Number 3. Han. Han Ji-sung is chaos with a heartbeat. That's not an exaggeration, it's a description of how he moves through the world. Among the 8 members of Stray Kids, Han occupies a role that defies neat categorization. He is simultaneously one of the group's most prolific songwriters, one of its most technically skilled rappers, one of its most emotionally transparent vocalists, and, crucially for this discussion, one of its most unpredictably warm human beings. You never know exactly what Han is going to do in a given moment. You only know that whatever it is, it's going to be genuine. And at security checkpoints, that unpredictability becomes a kind of superpower. To understand why Han's behavior at security screenings matters, you need to understand the emotional architecture of these environments. Security checkpoints, whether at airports, concert venues, or public events, are tension spaces by design. Everything about them is engineered to establish control. The lighting is bright and even, eliminating shadows where body language might be harder to read. The layout funnels people into single file lines, removing freedom of movement. Officers are positioned at elevated stations or strategic vantage points. Signage is directive: remove your shoes, empty your pockets, place electronics in a separate bin. The entire environment communicates a single message: this is serious. For the staff working inside that environment for 8, 10, 12 hours at a stretch, the seriousness becomes a kind of ambient weight. It presses down on every interaction. Officers don't get to relax between screenings. The next passenger is always seconds away, and the protocol resets to the same watchful baseline every single time. The emotional monotony of sustained vigilance is a specific kind of exhaustion that most people never think about. Han Ji-sung walks into that environment and, without any apparent effort, changes the temperature. Fan-captured footage from airports worldwide tells a consistent story. Han approaches security checkpoints the way he approaches most things, with a visible, almost physical energy that precedes him like a weather front. But unlike the nervous energy that some travelers bring to screenings, Han's energy is warm. It radiates outward. And its most recognizable expression is his smile. Han's smile has become something of a cultural artifact within the Stay fandom, and for good reason. It isn't a polished, practiced, idol-appropriate smile. It's wide, slightly asymmetrical, and it engages his entire face, eyes narrowing, cheeks lifting, a quality of genuine amusement or delight that is physiologically difficult to fake. Psychologist Paul Ekman, whose facial action coding system remains the foundational framework for analyzing facial expressions, identified the Duchenne smile, a smile that involves involuntary contraction of the orbicularis oculi muscle around the eyes, as the marker of authentic positive emotion. Han's characteristic smile fits that description consistently. It reads as real because it is real. When that smile is directed at a security officer during a checkpoint interaction, it does something that no amount of verbal politeness can accomplish on its own: it breaks the script. Security interactions follow a predictable social script: instruction, compliance, verification, clearance. Both parties know the script, both parties follow it, and neither party expects deviation. When Han introduces a wide, genuine smile into that script, sometimes accompanied by a funny face, a playful expression, or a small comedic gesture, he creates a moment of social novelty. The officer encounters something their routine hasn't prepared them for: a person who appears to be genuinely enjoying the interaction. This isn't trivial. Research in occupational psychology consistently shows that positive social interruptions, brief, unexpected moments of warmth or humor during monotonous work, have measurable effects on worker mood and fatigue. A 2018 study in the Journal of Occupational Health Psychology found that micro moments of positive social exchange during repetitive tasks reduced subjective reports of emotional exhaustion among workers in high vigilance roles. Han's behavior at security checkpoints functions as exactly this kind of micro moment. He doesn't disrupt the process. He doesn't slow anything down. He simply injects a flash of human warmth into a space designed to exclude it. What makes Han's approach particularly effective is its spontaneity. Unlike the practiced politeness of a formal bow or a rehearsed thank you, Han's expressions of friendliness at checkpoints feel improvised, because they are. He responds to the moment. If an officer looks particularly stern, Han might soften the interaction with a wider smile. If the process is running slowly and tension is building, he might make a small, self-deprecating expression, the kind of face that says, "I know this is tedious, and I'm in this with you." He reads the room and adjusts, which is a fundamentally different skill than simply applying a blanket politeness to every interaction. This emotional agility connects to a deeper aspect of Han's personality that has been publicly documented across years of interviews and behind-the-scenes content. Han has spoken openly about his experiences with anxiety, a fact that adds significant context to his behavior at security checkpoints. Someone who genuinely experiences anxiety and still chooses to project warmth, humor, And openness in high-tension environments isn't doing so because it comes effortlessly. They're doing it because they understand what tension feels like from the inside, and they've made a decision, conscious or instinctive, not to pass that tension along to others. Han's friendliness at security checkpoints isn't the breezy confidence of someone who's never felt uncomfortable. It's the deliberate warmth of someone who knows discomfort intimately and chooses connection over withdrawal. The effect on security staff is visible. In airport footage, officers who have just processed Han frequently display softened expressions, a slight loosening of professional composure, a hint of amusement, occasionally an outright smile. These are small reactions, but in the context of a job that demands emotional neutrality, they're significant. Han doesn't just pass through checkpoints. He leaves them a little lighter than he found them. His cheerfulness is not a performance. It's a practice, a way of moving through the world that treats every person he encounters as someone worth making smile. And if Han's gift is the ability to transform the atmosphere of a security checkpoint through sheer spontaneous warmth, the next member on this list achieves something similar through a quality even harder to manufacture, a kindness so deep and so consistent that it has become, for many who encounter it, the single most memorable thing about meeting a member of Stray Kids. Number 2. Felix. There is a moment, captured in countless fan videos, replayed millions of times across social media platforms, that distills who Lee Felix is more efficiently than any biography could. He walks through an airport, surrounded by the usual controlled chaos of a K-pop group in transit, managers directing movement, fans pressing against barriers, camera shutters firing in rapid bursts. And as he reaches a security checkpoint, he turns to the officer, and in a voice that sounds like it belongs to someone twice his age, he says, simply, "Thank you." 2 words. And yet, when Felix says them, people stop. Felix's voice is one of the most immediately recognizable instruments in K-pop. Measured at a bass register that sits remarkably low for someone with his slight frame and youthful face, the contrast between how he looks and how he sounds has become a defining feature of his public identity. First-time listeners regularly express shock. Security personnel who encounter him for the first time are no exception. When a person who appears soft-spoken and gentle opens his mouth and produces a voice that resonates at that depth, the cognitive dissonance creates a moment of heightened attention. Whatever he says in that moment lands with disproportionate impact. And what Felix says, almost without exception, is "thank you." This phrase, delivered in English, Korean, Japanese, or whatever language fits the country he's passing through, has become Felix's signature interaction at security checkpoints. Not as a scripted reflex, the way most travelers mutter thanks while gathering their belongings and moving on. Felix's delivery is direct. He faces the officer. He makes eye contact. He says the words with the kind of deliberate clarity that signals he means them specifically for this person, in this moment, for this particular act of service. The thank you isn't general. It's addressed. The frequency and consistency of this behavior across years of documented public appearances is what separates Felix from someone who is merely polite. Politeness is situational. It appears when social norms demand it and recedes when the pressure to perform is absent. What Felix demonstrates is something closer to a character trait so deeply embedded that it operates independent of context. Early morning flights. Late-night arrivals after 16-hour schedules. Airports in countries where he's been mobbed by fans and airports where he's passed through in relative anonymity. The thank you is always there. But the verbal thanks is only one dimension of what makes Felix's interactions with security staff remarkable. The other dimension is the smile. Felix's smile has been the subject of extensive fan discussion, and while fandom commentary often veers into hyperbole, the factual observation underneath is worth examining. His smile, when directed at a person rather than a camera, carries a specific quality of focus. It narrows the social field to a single interaction. In a security checkpoint environment, where officers are accustomed to being looked through, treated as extensions of the scanning equipment, Felix's smile does something functionally unusual. It isolates the officer as a person deserving of individual acknowledgement. This isn't a subtle effect. Multiple accounts from security personnel, shared through social media, through fan-relayed conversations, through the informal networks that exist between event staff, have expressed surprise at Felix's warmth. The word that recurs across these accounts is genuine. Not polite. Not professional. Genuine. The distinction matters. Polite and professional are expectations that any public figure can meet with minimal emotional investment. Genuine requires something that can't be performed, actual care about the person standing in front of you. Felix's background adds important context to this behavior. Born in Sydney, Australia, Felix grew up in a cultural environment that blends Australian informality with the Korean values instilled by his family. Australian social culture places a high premium on egalitarianism, the idea that a person's job title or social position doesn't determine their worth in an interaction. The phrase "no worries" isn't just Australian slang, it reflects a cultural orientation that treats every person in a social exchange as fundamentally equal. Korean culture, meanwhile, emphasizes jong, a concept with no precise English equivalent, describing a deep emotional bond or affection that develops through shared experience and sincere interaction. Jong isn't something you decide to feel. It's something that builds naturally when you consistently treat people with genuine warmth. Felix operates at the intersection of these two cultural frameworks. He brings Australian directness, the willingness to look someone in the eye and say thank you without ceremony, and Korean emotional depth, the instinct to imbue even brief interactions with sincerity. The result is a mode of social engagement that feels distinct from any single cultural template. It's Felix's own. At concert venues, this quality amplifies. Backstage security at large-scale Stray Kids events involves teams of local personnel who may have limited familiarity with the group. For these officers, the members are names on a credential list, faces to match against photos. The interaction is supposed to be anonymous and procedural. Felix disrupts that anonymity not by demanding recognition but by offering it. He thanks officers who check his credentials. He smiles at staff who inspect equipment cases. He treats the pre-show security process, which many artists regard as an irritating obstacle between them and the stage, as a series of human encounters, each one worthy of a moment's genuine attention. The cumulative effect of this behavior, repeated across hundreds of security interactions over the course of Stray Kids' career, is a reputation that precedes Felix in professional circles. Venue staff talk. Security teams that work multiple K-pop events compare notes, formally and informally. And the consensus that emerges around Felix is consistent. He is, in the most unembellished sense of the word, kind. Not kind as a brand strategy. Not kind as an idle concept. Kind as a human being who treats other human beings as though they matter, even when no one is watching, even when there is nothing to be gained. Felix makes people feel seen. In a security checkpoint, a space explicitly designed to make individuals feel scrutinized, being seen instead of scanned is a gift that most people never receive. And yet, there is one member of Stray Kids who does all of this and more, someone whose behavior toward security staff isn't just friendly, but foundational. Someone who leads not by instruction but by example. And he's been doing it since before the group's name was ever spoken on a stage. Number 1. Bang Chan. There is a reason Bang Chan leads Stray Kids, and it has nothing to do with being the oldest, or the most experienced, or the first to be selected during their formation. Those facts are true. Christopher Bang was born in Sydney in 1997, trained at JYP Entertainment for 7 years before debuting, and was the anchor around which the group was built on the 2017 survival show that gave them their name. But none of that explains why he leads. What explains it is something that no training program can teach and no entertainment company can manufacture, the instinct to treat every person he encounters as though they are worth his full attention. At security checkpoints, that instinct is on full display. And it is the reason Bang Chan occupies the top of this list without serious competition. Start with what the cameras capture. Fan-taken airport footage of Bang Chan, accumulated across 6 years of international travel, spanning dozens of countries and hundreds of flights, reveals a behavioral pattern so consistent that it functions less as a habit and more as a principle. When Bang Chan approaches a security checkpoint, he greets the staff. Not with a nod. Not with the efficient, minimal acknowledgement that satisfies basic social expectations. He greets them verbally, with eye contact, often with a smile that precedes any procedural interaction. In Korean airports, where the checkpoint officers share his cultural framework, Bang Chan deploys formal Korean greetings, the kind that signal respect not just for the person but for the role they occupy. At international airports, he switches to English, his native language, spoken with the Australian accent that has become one of his most recognizable traits, and offers greetings that carry a casual warmth uncommon in security environments. "Hi, how are you?" is a phrase most people use as a social placeholder, a sound that occupies the space where actual interest in the answer should be. When Bang Chan asks it, the delivery suggests he wouldn't mind hearing the answer. And occasionally, he does hear it, brief exchanges where officers, disarmed by the genuine quality of the question, respond with something beyond the procedural script. This matters. It matters because security officers at international airports and high-profile event venues are trained to maintain emotional distance. Their protocols don't include small talk. The interaction is supposed to flow in one direction. Officer instructs, traveler complies. When a traveler initiates a social exchange, particularly one that signals interest in the officer's well-being, it inverts the expected dynamic. It places the traveler in the role of the person extending care, and the officer in the role of the person receiving it. For most security staff, this inversion happens so rarely that when it does, it creates a moment of genuine human contact in the middle of a mechanized process. Bang Chan creates these moments repeatedly. But the greetings are only the beginning. What elevates Bang Chan above every other member on this list is the bookending behavior, the fact that he bows before and after security checks. This detail, captured in multiple fan videos across different countries and different years, deserves careful examination. Bowing before a security screening signals respect for the process and the person administering it. It says, "I acknowledge your authority here, and I submit to it willingly." Bowing after a security screening signals something different and, in many ways, something rarer. It says, "What you just did for me, the screening, the procedure, the few minutes of your professional life spent ensuring my safety and the safety of everyone else passing through, that had value, and I want you to know I recognize it." The post-screening bow is, functionally, a thank you expressed through the body. And in Korean cultural grammar, where the physical bow carries communicative weight that verbal thanks alone cannot fully replicate, doing both, thanking and bowing, constitutes a complete expression of gratitude. Bang Chan does both. Consistently. The leadership dimension of this behavior cannot be separated from the behavior itself. Bang Chan is not simply a member of Stray Kids who happens to be polite. He is the leader, the person whose conduct implicitly sets the standard for the group. When the other 7 members see their leader bowing to security officers, greeting them by initiating conversation, and treating checkpoint interactions as opportunities for human connection rather than obstacles to endure, that behavior establishes a norm. It tells the group, this is how we treat people. The fact that all 8 members of Stray Kids demonstrate varying degrees of friendliness toward security staff, as this entire countdown has documented, is not a coincidence. It is, at least in part, a reflection of the culture that Bang Chan has cultivated within the group since its formation. This leadership by example extends to concert venue security, where the dynamics are different but the principle is the same. Backstage at large-scale events, Bang Chan has been observed, by staff, by fans who catch glimpses through open doors or backstage footage, engaging with security personnel in ways that go beyond the transactional. He doesn't just clear checkpoints. He acknowledges the people staffing them. In an industry where the hierarchy between artist and support staff is steep and often unchallenged, Bang Chan's consistent refusal to treat that hierarchy as a reason for emotional distance is a choice that requires active maintenance. 7 years of JYP training. A debut forged through a public survival competition. Multiple world tours. Billions of streams. A fandom that spans every populated continent. None of it has altered the fundamental equation that governs how Bang Chan interacts with the people around him. The security officer at Incheon at 6 in the morning receives the same respect as the executive at the awards ceremony. The checkpoint staffer at a regional concert venue is greeted with the same warmth as the interviewer at a major broadcast station. The consistency is the message. Bang Chan doesn't lead Stray Kids because he was chosen first. He leads because he demonstrates, in every interaction, including the ones that no one is supposed to notice, what it looks like to treat people as though their presence in your day is a gift rather than an inconvenience. He is the friendliest member during security checks not because he does the most. He is the friendliest because he means it the most, and because 7 other people watched him do it and decided to follow. 8 members. Hundreds of security checkpoints. Thousands of brief, forgettable interactions that most public figures treat as background noise in the machinery of fame. Stray Kids treat them as something else entirely. From Changbin's steady, quiet compliance to Seungmin's meticulous preparation. From Hyunjin's instinctive smile to Lee No's understated bow of thanks. From Hyunjin's deliberate, graceful body language to Han's infectious warmth that rewrites the mood of an entire room. From Felix's deep-voiced sincerity that makes every officer feel individually seen, to Bang Chan's leadership, a leadership that doesn't just model respect but embeds it into the DNA of the group itself. What this countdown reveals isn't a ranking of politeness. It's a portrait of character, the kind that only becomes visible when no one is keeping score. Security checkpoints offer no stage, no applause, no fan cams. There is nothing to gain from being kind in those moments except the knowledge that you treated another human being the way they deserved to be treated. Every single member of Stray Kids makes that choice. Repeatedly. Without exception. And that is why stays carry a pride that goes deeper than chart positions, sold-out arenas, or streaming records. Because the group they chose to support didn't just earn their admiration through talent. They earned it through the way they treat people when the spotlight isn't on, the security guard at 5 a.m., the checkpoint officer at a backstage door, the person in the uniform who almost never hears thank you. Stray Kids say it anyway. That's not idle behavior. That's character. And character, unlike fame, doesn't fade.